Intertel, a project for international understanding through television, is a partnership of Rediffusion London, the Australian Broadcasting Commission, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, National Educational Television, and the Westinghouse Broadcasting Company of the United States.
The promoters said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And it came to pass that all the electric bulbs in all America, but all 800 million of them, are made today by 16 men who push buttons. Here endeth the first lesson. What do you give the nation that has everything? Why, anything. The factories hum with production. The warehouses bulge. All that remains is to sell it. Sell it hard and sell it soft. We are at the convention of the suppliers of barbers and beauticians, dealers in dreams.
We are meant for men, a man's hairspray. Take it home, try it, you'll love it.
Here's a new product that's sold exclusively in barbershops.
We sell hair goods, hair accessories, sleep caps, curler caps, scarves, crop scarves, hair nets, wave nets. But we've come out with the most exciting promotion in the entire beauty industry. Which is what? We give trading stamps to the salon operators.
The first ear cosmetic, accentuating that part of the body that has never had the real charm that it's entitled to. Kiss-proof, washes right off. Can be used with or without earrings, and it's something that's going to change the hairstyles because it's going to force the women to wear their hair back off of the ear.
Here's a nice little item. The women are complaining about the heat. They can just fan themselves just like this. Isn't that nice?
Sir, meant for men. Take it home, try it, it's a man's hairspray.
Do you know that 93% of the people in this country save trading stamps? And the most important stamp to that woman who is saving them is the particular stamp that she's saving. That's why this plan is so unique, because nobody else in the country has ever been able to accomplish it, to give them their choice of trading stamps.
I like apple juice, I like grape juice, let's drink the drink that's got 'em both, smart T-M. Quenches your thirst, refreshes you fast, quenches your thirst, refreshes you fast. Let's drink the drink that's got 'em both, Mott's PM.
Drink Mott's PM, a delicious blend of apple juice and grape juice that quenches your thirst and refreshes you fast.
Nobody laughs at a man who's got pimples, unless he tries to hide them like a girl. If you knew how silly it looks when a man uses a girl's messy cream that shows on his face. Come on, mister. Stop treating pimples like a girl and fight pimples like a man with MFC. That's MFC, Men and Face Conditioner. MFC helps dry up pimples fast. MFC also helps dry up the oils that often cause pimples. It even helps grow healthy new skin. And best of all, MFC is invisible on your face. The only thing that shows is the improvement. So, mister, if you've got a skin problem, don't treat it like a girl. Fight pimples like a man.
There's no hiding place now, not from the incantations of the hard sell. Come, buy. The street cries of $1,000 million peddlers endlessly assail the being of America. Come, buy. The call of the hucksters echoes through the land. We can't stop producing, so for God's sake consume. Buy anything, for any reason. To pause for breath is to betray the economy. The frontal attack is replaced by the ambush.
Pardon me, miss, can you help me?
Yes?
Have you registered from the Stonegate Company yet? No, I haven't.
Oh, well, we're registering all the girls in this area over here to receive a beautiful free gift from the Stonegate Company. And along with that, we more or less want to introduce our fine hope chest items to you. What is your first name?
How am I obligated after you register me?
Oh, none whatsoever. The company will take and send out a beautiful little china miniature that you can keep on your dresser or possibly take down to work and use for bobby pins or things like that. It's a nice little china miniature with a beautiful pattern on it to more or less show you our products are available at any time that you might want them. What is your first name?
Lana.
Uh-huh. What's your last name, Lana?
Calamayo.
Uh-huh. Where do you live at, Lana?
4846 North Normandy.
I see. Listen, I'm going to be working in that area this evening. Why don't I drop by around 6:30 or possibly 7 o'clock and drop your little gift off and maybe some literature and some price lists and things like that?
Well, I'm not really too interested in hope chest items. So.
Oh, well, we know this. The company understands this, but we know that sometime in the future you may be. And we certainly hope that you call on us instead of somebody else at that time. Please, don't be so suspicious. Just a part-time job with me, and of course, we take and we send out all these little things for you, and I get paid for it. I'm working my way through marriage. This tells a story of your marriage, incidentally. You notice it has two bands on it. One signifies your engagement band, the other your wedding band. The little Greek key in here is the bond that'll keep your marriage together. Of course, the white brilliance that you see here will always stay like that. Isn't this beautiful?
Oh, this is beautiful.
And the nice part about it is that you can have it for as little as no money down, $1 or $2 a week. We'll let you have the entire program tonight as a first call special for $299.95. Now, would you take this on a budget program or a cash program?
The budget.
I see. Now, would you be able to handle $2 a week or $3 a week?
$3.
$3 a week. Fine. We'll set it up on that basis. Would you okay that here where I've got the little X mark, please?
It isn't trade, it's a vocation, calling for missionaries, professional evangelists of the American dream, invoking all the tender humanities and the proof that salesmanship is something that can itself be sold.
You say, what is it? It's two words. Sincere appreciation. Sincere appreciation. You know what this means, don't you? It means one thing. If you think somebody can help you because they are good at something, you tell them. You don't do it with money. You just tell them. It works very simply. I'm married to a good-looking gal. Molly's a knockout. She's been this way since she was 15. People have been telling her all her life. I've been married to this woman 25 years. I've been telling her every chance I get, honey, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Now, who does this? Who does this sincere appreciation thing and has the whole world at his feet? You know this one. You are intimately acquainted with this one. This is the greatest public relations man on the face of the earth. If the attitude of all these people were that, your dream would be automatically done if you never made another speech as long as you lived. The whole world by the ears because he does one little thing. You say, who is this guy? You say, I know him? Sure. Your dog. You say, my dog? What does a dog sell? Well, I'll tell you what he sells. Everything that you are beating your brains out to earn, he's already got it for free. I think everybody in this room, if you're going to be totally honest with yourself, and I ask you to confess nothing, is looking for a shortcut to success. Now, I'm talking about success in terms of money and worldly goods, because this is what it is. I am aware of the moral issues involved in this when I start out this way. I know that money is the root of all evil, a forerunner of iniquity. I know that my mother used to say, money doesn't make happiness, Robert, which is true. But I think the fact that my father was a multimillionaire considerably helped this philosophy of hers. Rockefeller, old man Rockefeller said, you can't buy health with money. Wasn't he 97 when he ran out of gas?
It is fitting that there should be temples, worship of certain virtues, and marble monuments to Mammon. In California did William Randolph Hearst a pleasure dome decree, the castle of St. Simeon, erected from the assorted antiquities of Europe to the glory of God and of a simple American newspaper millionaire who exemplified the first American virtue, which is achievement, that is to say, getting rich. But to be properly acceptable to the American fairy tale, success had to come through endeavor, work as an end in itself, as defined by Art Carstens, professor of labor relations, whose father was given a piece of virgin land.
We moved on a homestead. We got 640 acres for almost nothing as a gift from the government. But we hadn't settled on this homestead for more than a month before we were taught that this was the prize for thrift and all the hard work and this kind of thing. And during the early years that I lived on the homestead, the one thing that I learned was the importance of work, hard work. Work that involved the production of things. And when I went to school, the thing that I remember most vividly was a poem we used to recite in school, which went something like this: work, work, my boy, be not afraid, look labor boldly in the face, take up the hammer or the spade, and blush not for your humble place. This is the doctrine under which I grew up. And I felt this very, very strongly, along with all my high school classmates. Every Sunday when we went to church, we sang, work for the night is coming.
Work for the night is coming. Work through the sunny noon. Fill bright showers with labor. Rest comes sure and soon.
Toil was a moral compulsion. In those days, toil made sense. The early Americans drew life from the land, extracting its meat and its metals. And this was not only necessary, it was right, morally.
When man works no more, work for the night is coming under the sunset skies, while the bright hints are glowing, work for daylight flies.
The night continued to come, and the work went on. But it was changing, and the night seemed farther away than ever. The emphasis altered. Now came production, the genesis of the great phenomenon, American industry. It demanded new ways of thought, a totally new set of values, and they were hard to find, for the values had no roots anymore. Now came the day of the engineers, and the assembly line, and the interchangeable part, the birth of the most wanted machine, and the explosive discovery that the horseless carriage could be mass-produced into the Tin Lizzie. This was the first American industrial revolution, and its prophet was, of course, Mr. Henry Ford I, who made cars like rabbits make rabbits in great abundance and for the multitude, on the famous principle that you could choose any color you liked as long as it was black. He triumphantly represented the twin American ideals, ruthlessness and success. He stood for the great article of faith that said business and government were separate things, and never the twain should overlap, and that the genius of the businessman should dominate the paltry politician. Contemporary and comrade of Ford was that other oracle of the buoyant generation, Thomas Alva Edison, even more a creator in his own way, since, deaf as a post though he was, he invented the gramophone and the printing telegraph, and exactly 1,298 other such inventions that have since so enriched and bedeviled the world. Edison was very much part of that powerful prosperity. He, too, nudged the great industrial daydream along its soaring path. And then, like an economic earthquake, that abounding affluence suddenly collapsed and broke like a bubble. In the great financial crash of the early 30s, Americans learned in a wounded bewilderment how fleeting a thing is security and how far from the frontier they had come. The hour, as they say, produced the man, a new Democratic president called Franklin Delano Roosevelt, himself immensely rich, yet notably understanding of the dreadful dilemma of the dispossessed. FDR's New Deal notion was radically simple, that wealth was basically unstable unless distributed, and that to sell things you had to have buyers. That set the pattern for the affluent society. And so, through the valley of the shadow of the Great Depression, the American economy edged back to solvency. The system had not, after all, let them down. The system must be okay, basically. Working and gaining is the function of man. And the economy resumed its rocket course to richness, to the great abundant embarrassments of today, where the watchword is, brother, live now and pay some other time.
You can have a brand new home for the price of a new car. And if you want a lot to put it on, you really have it made, because Cy Bennett figures anybody willing to invest in a lot is the home-loving, responsible type. And he'll build you a house on that lot and charge you nothing down. You like that? Wait till you hear the rest. They're not prefabs.
In the today of the great spending, the American people must be given credit for one thing. For one thing. For everything. Giving America credit is a way of life. America is built on the economic axiom that what goes up must come down, that what is produced must be consumed, and the eternal disposability of dollars. We are about to enter the biggest supermarket in the world.
I tell you why we all do this, because we all want to sing an Irish song to LibreOffice. You don't know the words? Just sing ya, ya, blah, blah. To LibreOffice, sing Augustine, to LibreOffice, sing Augustine. Das Geld ist verstoffen, sie braucht es verstoffen. To LibreOffice, sing Augustine.
In the economy of total consumption, money is no object. That is, not at the time. Money comes later. For the moment, the important thing is the credit rating, which is the citizen's certificate of solvency, the diploma of the deferred payment. For some, it has practically abolished hard cash. It makes everything so easy to have now rather than tomorrow. Everything is available when all life is on tick, and when the motto is, charge it.
Okay, I think I'll take this one.
All right. Is that a cash or a charge?
Charge.
Okay. Do you have your decent plate?
Yes.
Good. You have a lot of them.
Here it is.
You can fly with no change of plane to Guatemala, Panama, San Salvador, Caracas, Brasilia, Sao Paulo, or Rio. And if you want to swing completely around South America and see both coasts, 9 cities for the price of one. Buy a round-trip ticket to Buenos Aires. As little as 10% down gets you on your way to any of Pan Am's 15 Latin American destinations.
A man of God drowning in a whirlpool of temptation. With Ava Gardner, Deborah Carr, Sue Lyon, in Tennessee Williams, The Night of the Iguana. Since man has known woman, there has never been such a night.
Did you know there's a man right here in town who actually loves to pay bills, other people's bills? He's the manager of your nearby Dial Finance office. He can pay all your bills and cut your monthly payments as much as 1/2. Helping people solve money problems is his business, and he loves it. He's had plenty of experience at Dial, and he knows money to get out of debt is a happy solution to most people's problems. So if you need money, dial Dial Finance. Remember, you have a friend at Dial, and he's anxious to get you the money. His name?
Joe Bird. Joe's the manager of Dial's office at 228 East 4th Street in Long Beach. Now, if you live in Long Beach, dial Hemlock 27481. Ask for Joe. He's waiting for your call and a heck of a nice guy. Dial Hemlock 27481. Call right now.
Dial Finance for the friendliest service that's known. Just pick up the phone and when you hear the tone, dial Finance for a loan.
Alpine 55421.
The argument is that there is no saturation point. There's always room for a bit more buying, another little article or object or service or amenity or luxury or induced hypnotic compulsion to acquire what you don't need with funds you don't have. It is known as instant money or creative indebtedness. It is the illusion of ownership, or perhaps the ownership of illusion. The conventions of unreality are, however, strict. The world of Wonderland has no place for nonconformists.
Hello? No, sir, I don't. Live in San Francisco.
No, I don't have any ID with me. It's in my car.
Where's your car?
I'm looking for it. I parked about 2 hours ago, and I've been walking around, and I started looking for it about half an hour ago. I can't remember the street.
Can't remember the street. No, it looked like the area that you were parked in.
Well, it was in somewhere. This is Piedmont, isn't it?
That's correct.
I was just looking around Piedmont.
We don't have anybody just looking around Piedmont. Suppose you get in the car and we'll see if we can find your automobile for you. Nobody walks in Piedmont. This is the land where cars own people. But things mustn't last, mustn't endure. Survival would distort the economy and ruin the Ark of the Covenant, which is production. From creation to destruction is a brief enough span, but even so, too long. If industry makes X million cars a year, it must dispose of X million cars a year, so that X plus million cars a year can replace them, for of such is the kingdom of commerce. An old car is an old corpse, an incubus and a traitor to the great machine of profitable progress. Begone, dull car. There is, therefore, a graveyard for automobiles. In the literal sense, a concentration camp. Here is the resurrection and the life, said the automobile industry. Here is the indestructibility of matter. Observe the philosophy of reincarnation in the fiery furnace. What was once a sheet of steel and became a car, returns to its maker and becomes again a sheet of steel. And, consequently, once again a car. It will be the same car, only different. It will be this year's car instead of last year's car. It will be a little bigger, a little smarter, a little dearer. It will add minimally to the costly congestion of America. But the cycle will be complete. The endless appetite of carnivorous America demands a rationalization even of the bleak business of butchery. And here a snag arises in the old social rhythm, for the more efficient every process becomes, the more men it can do without. Even the mechanical reduction of flesh to food needs fewer and fewer men all the time. It still needs craftsmen of a kind, but fewer than last year. And next year will mean fewer still. And the following year, who knows?
This little machine never has to rest. It never even stops for lunch. Wish I had a machine that could feed my family. They sure are a hungry bunch. Automation sweeping the nation. It looks like eventually they'll invent a little button that'll push all the buttons, and they won't need you and me. One little man pushes one little button and he reads his magazine, while the work that was done by 1,000 men is done by that little machine. Out there right now, some inventor's working on something that'll change the world. Push a little button if you want a little boy, and another if you want a little girl. Automation sweeping the nation, it looks like eventually they'll invent a little button that'll push all the buttons, and they won't need you and me. They'll invent a little button that'll push all the buttons, and they won't need you and me.
Computers. 20 years ago, there wasn't even a name for them. Today, the computers haunt and dominate the whole American industrial scene, the super-efficient, mindless masters of mechanics. The computer's servitors even have a new labor classification, witnesses. They don't do any work, they watch the work being done. They may have the air of scholars, but all that job requires is a high school diploma and 21 days training. In every university of America, the question of automation is becoming obsessive.
With the population of the world increasing, almost doubling within the next 30 or 40 years, wouldn't it seem better really to hold back automation because of the unemployment problem?
What are we going to do with all the unemployed people in the United States?
Do you think Columbus is keeping up with the changing times of unemployment, or do you think we're behind or ahead the rest of the big cities in the United States?
Will automation ever take the place of the doctor or the lawyer?
Even now, this creeping fear of the machine is starting a reaction of anxiety clean through the United States. America is a place where new ideas easily get out of control. Could they have exaggerated the threat of this takeover bid by the computers? One of the great computer experts is Paul Armour.
I don't think that we really know the limit to which machines can take over tasks from men. I suspect that that rather than our being surprised by finding some sort of a limit, that we'll be surprised to find out what things they can do which today we say they'll never be able to do. I'm one of the optimists about machines' abilities.
Yet as far as the ordinary layman can grasp the theory of computers, it would seem that they are basically simple things that have to be instructed in simple terms.
I think this notion that the computer is nothing but an adding machine is quite wrong. The machine is basically a symbol manipulator, and it was just sort of a historical accident that the first symbols that we chose to have it work with were numeric ones. But today there is much research in what is sometimes called the simulation of human cognition. Research which attempts to learn more about the mental activity of human beings, how they process information.
The computer, therefore, may be limited only by our ability to put it to work. Perhaps it could, who knows, be developed to a point where it could, in fact, learn its own skills.
I think that one of the other notions you hear about machines is that they're very stupid and they only do exactly what they're told to do. And this is quite true, but the people who are saying this don't seem to realize that what is the limit on what they can be told to do? Can they be told to learn to do something? I think they can.
W.H. Ferry is a social philosopher at the Center for Democratic Studies at Santa Barbara.
I believe within the lifetimes of all of my associates, myself, most of the work of most of the people will be done by machines. I agree to that portion of it. How we will exchange the present society for a new society is the hard question for all of us.
Within our lifetime, he said. So how fast is this revolution coming? How much time has America got to prepare? Dr. Ralph Bellman is another leading computer man.
I think that the basic question is this: can a democratic society stand the strain of having large numbers of people out of work and therefore uncommitted to our system? This is the basic problem. So the question is, what are we going to do with these people? How are we going to employ them? And how are we going to employ them, let's say, within the framework of a capitalistic system?
This is surely the real crunch of the automotive revolution. The fact that it's starting in the one country that sets an almost mystical value on work and its reward.
The United States is certainly the most automated society at the present time. It will be the most automated society for as far as we can see into the future. Yet simultaneously, the United States is the strongest upholder of the Protestant ethic. It is the country where the Puritan tradition is strongest, where it is held that work is absolutely essential, that man is not contributing to society unless he works. Now the question is, how can a society which believes in this very strongly, how can it face the cultural, political, and social implications of automation where there may not be enough physical work for everybody?
Well, we got as much right to our belief as they have theirs. And we believe that you poor people ought to have the same opportunity to educate your kid as well as theirs. All we're asking for is a decent wage, a decent living. Not to be kicked around, stomped around any way they want to do. It's time was waking up, boys. It's time was moving out. And let's get what's due us. And I thank you.
What the bosses call enhanced gross national production isn't much help to the worker who is now not needed to produce.
While the night is darkening, when man's work is o'er.
Even 3 years ago, this was an almost unknown topic. It was a topic that never got into the center of the dialogue at all. Now it's almost the chief domestic issue of this country.
Faced with this dire automation problem, America reacts with a slogan word: retraining. The official circles have a lot of faith in the belief that as a man is automated out of one job, he can be trained for another. Also, that people can move from production industries to the public services. Peter Max is a notable industrial economist.
I believe it is true that with friction and with slippage, the system, just as it has been adjusting, And people who were previously employed in the manufacture of goods will now become employed in the provision of services. Now, this is not any kind of a drastic change in terms of distributing income and problems of that sort. It means that people, as time goes on, have different livelihoods, or different occupations, if you will, than they have had before. They will be providing services rather than manufacturing products.
Already the service occupations in America have been built up more than anywhere else. But can they possibly absorb everyone who is automated out of industry? Michael Harrington is a celebrated authority on the problems automation brings.
Well, first of all, given the figures we have of the potential of automation to displace people, there simply are not enough of the personal service occupations to allow that to take up the slack. Secondly, up until now, services have not been automated, but they can be. There is evidence now that there's going to be an automated department store in which there'll be no salespeople. You'll do the entire thing by machines. The grocery companies and the supermarkets are working on automated checkout lines where they'll dispense with the checkout people. Many of these occupations can be automated.
It's already apparent that the kind of workers needed in the future will be very different from the familiar image of the working man.
I suspect that we're at the point now where it doesn't make very much sense to retrain some people because it is so difficult to retrain some of these people. The jobs which are going unfulfilled today are primarily jobs which require a higher degree of native intellect than many of these people who we might consider retraining. The percentage of people who can be retrained, I think, is much smaller than the percentage of people who need to be retained.
I regard these programs of retraining and replacement as sort of last-ditch stands against a new kind of world, a world that's novel in all of its aspects. All people, I suppose, not only Americans, but all people resist the new. There is no such thing as a good new idea. There are only good old ideas, and so we cling to old ideas as long as we can.
Is it really true, then, that America will just have to face the fact, as all developed countries will, that work is on its way out?
That answer to the problem really misses the heart of it, because the heart of it is, all right, once you've done that, once you imagine, as we now can with our technology, literally an abundant world. Once, as Paul Valéry, the French poet, has said, the world is finished. Once the Faustian experience is over, you've made it. What then do you do? And therefore, I think that this answer of the service industry, the social service, although certainly quite relevant now and something that America and any abundant society must do, that answer avoids this basic question of we are, in the future at some point, going to have a technology in which people will not have to work as we have defined work traditionally. What are we going to substitute for that work as an activity, and how are these people going to consume? How are they going to gain their title to consumption if they don't do it through work?
Could it actually be that America, where work and reward are especially sacred, will one day have to pay people for just being people, pay them not to produce, but to consume? In such a country, could it even be contemplated?
Whether, as some people have proposed in the United States, you simply send people a check, which is one way of handling. Another way, which curiously has been proposed by an economic advisor to Senator Barry Goldwater, is that we have a negative income tax in the United States. That at the end of the year, you send in a report to the government on how much money you made. If you made over X amount of dollars, you pay a tax to the government. If you make under X amount of dollars, the government pays a tax to you to bring it up to X. This conservative economist says that this can be done quite simply through the tax system. And you could say, all right, $5,000 a year, everybody shall have it. So if you only make $3,000, you send your tax into the government, and they send you a check for $2,000. I don't want to minimize the difficulty, but I think means can be found to transfer consumption titles, i.e. money, to citizens.
It isn't just a question of monkeying around a little bit with sociologists on one side and econometrists on another. This requires a wholly new view of what society is, what it ought to be, what its possibilities are, the willingness for people to try to take hold of their own destinies and invent new institutions, to take hold of their own destinies and work out a decent world. After all of the Western world has been sort of consecrated to this notion of hard work and the relation of work to income and the automaticity of the whole procedure, that everything would sort of automatically fall into place if you just kept the machinery going. It isn't working that way. The circle's been broken. It's very hard for us to imagine a society not dedicated to getting and spending. So when the possibility comes before us of, in effect, taking the economic machine from the middle of the room and putting it over on the side, getting it out of the way so people have some living room, something to do with themselves as human beings, great shouts of alarm go up all over the place.
I think for many years we've seen human beings sacrificed to this faceless god of efficiency. And it's about time that we now realize that the basic problem is that of the human being. He is what counts, not the machine, not the question of efficiency, but whether we're meeting human needs, whether human beings are happy.
The kind of world I'm talking about is not one in which work has been eliminated. It's a world in which work has been substantially redefined. James Thurber once said that his hardest task was to convince his wife that he was working when he was looking out of the window. Well, there's going to be a lot of looking out of the window done in the future.
Well, an interesting point here is that an Englishman was one of the first prophets of abundance, John Maynard Keynes. And Keynes said precisely that when this period of abundance comes, vices that we have called virtues, such as seeking money, will be seen as the vices they are, and mankind will then be able to get on with decent occupations. So I think that a change in the value system, a profound change in the value system will take place.
Are we going to make sure that every citizen of this country gets a fair share of all this wealth? Are we going to make sure that he has his place in the sun, that he's taken care of? Are we going to make sure that everybody around the world gets their fair share? These are the basic problems of our computerized society.
I don't think it's going to be easy at all. On paper, it's quite simple. We've got this enormous production. We will have an increasing production, and theoretically, on paper, we can simply apply that production to the needs of people without reference to whether they work or not. The only difficulty there is psychological, political, social, religious, because to do that is to change the very basis of American society. We've believed for years, decades, since our beginning, that it is through hard work that a man establishes his worth as a human being, his worth in the eyes of his neighbor, and even in the Protestant ethic, his worth in the eyes of God. And when you talk about changing that, you're talking about changing some of the most fundamental assumptions of American society. So I would say, in short, yes, it is quite easy if American society will have a revolution in its thinking, but that revolution is quite difficult.
I think for the first time in human history, we can do anything we want. We can produce anything we want. We can give every citizen everything he wants, if we want to. So the primary question is, what do we really want? What is it that will really make us happy? That is the basic question.
Who are we? I think the United States is pretty well lost now. It isn't just a sort of accident that commissions have been stumbling around the United States looking under bushels for the national purpose. It isn't an accident that most observers now characterize the United States as a country greatly afflicted by enemy, alienation, and all those other fashionable words to say, to describe a person or an institution that's come unstuck.
I'm not at all sure we're going to make it, because as you indicate, the change is so extremely fast that the thought is going to have to run very fast to catch up with it. And we've hardly begun. I don't see the motive for our thinking so radically. Abundance seems to create a certain kind of complacency rather than an ability for candid thought. And perhaps we won't do it. Perhaps we will be, and will be one of the greatest paradoxes in history, perhaps we will be victimized by our creation of abundance.
It isn't given to every nation to be threatened with ruin through riches, to be a society potentially in mortal danger from its own prosperity. Nobody ever faced this paradox before, and it's befalling a people so resilient and so flexible in so much, and now so desperately at a loss to know how to cope with the looming peril of the Golden Age. The American working citizen may soon be made entirely of transistors, bloodless, brainless, and faultless, ready to emancipate the human American from all he really wants, his own value, his own usefulness and pride. He faces his liberation with doubt and even fear. It would be a strange fate to be invented into oblivion, to find the work at an end because, indeed, the night had come.